June 5th, 1944. Somewhere off the coast of Normandy, France. Private First Class Michael Thompson sat in the cold belly of a transport ship, surrounded by 2,000 men who knew they might not see tomorrow. In his shaking hands, he held a pencil and a piece of paper. What he wrote in the next hour would be the last words his wife would ever hear from him, but not in the way anyone expected. This is the story of a letter that was never supposed to be found. A confession written in the shadow of the largest invasion in human history. A truth that would take 70 years to fully understand. This is the story of a man who thought he was a coward, but proved he was anything but. Before we talk about what happened on Omaha Beach, you need to understand who Michael Thompson was before the war found him. Michael James Thompson was born on March 14, 1921, in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, the second of 4 children. His father, Robert Thompson, owned a small dairy farm on the outskirts of town, 60 acres of rolling hills, a dozen cows, and a red barn that needed painting every other summer. Life was simple. Wake at dawn, milk the cows, mend the fences, go to school when the harvest allowed it. Michael grew up with dirt under his fingernails and calluses on his palms. He was strong for his age, broad-shouldered from throwing hay bales, quiet in the way farm boys often are. His mother, Dorothy, taught school in town. She made sure all her children could read and write properly, even when the farm demanded their time. Michael loved books, adventure stories mostly. Jack London, Mark Twain. Stories about men facing impossible odds and surviving through grit and luck. He never imagined he'd live one of those stories himself. Michael graduated from Cedar Rapids High School in 1939. He was 18. The world was already sliding toward war, but Iowa felt a million miles from Europe's troubles. Hitler had invaded Poland that September, but to a farm boy in the American heartland, it was just news on the radio, distant thunder that didn't seem to concern him. He had other plans. Michael wanted to marry Helen Pritchard. Helen was the daughter of the town pharmacist, a bright-eyed girl with auburn hair and a laugh that Michael said reminded him of wind chimes. They'd known each other since childhood, went to the same church, the same school, sat on the same wooden benches during summer band concerts in the town square. Michael asked her to marry him in the spring of 1940, under an oak tree by the Cedar River. She said yes before he finished the question. They were married that June in a small ceremony at First Methodist Church. 23 people attended. Helen wore her mother's wedding dress. Michael wore a borrowed suit that was too tight in the shoulders. They honeymooned for 3 days at a lake cabin 40 miles north, where they fished and read books and made promises about the future. Michael got a job at the John Deere plant in Waterloo, assembling tractors. Helen worked part-time at her father's pharmacy. They rented a small house on Maple Street, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a leaky faucet, a porch that sagged slightly to the left. It was perfect. For a while, life was exactly what they'd hoped for. Then came December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor changed everything. Michael was listening to the radio that Sunday afternoon when the bulletin came through. Japanese planes had attacked the naval base in Hawaii. Thousands dead. The Pacific Fleet crippled. America was at war. The next morning, Michael went to the recruiting station in Cedar Rapids. Helen begged him not to. "Let someone else go," she said. "We just started our lives together." But Michael felt the pull that millions of young men felt in those days. A sense that duty mattered more than comfort, that freedom wasn't free, that good men had to stand up when evil rose. "If I don't go," Michael told Helen, "I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I was a coward." That word, coward, would haunt him. Michael enlisted in the United States Army on December 10, 1941, 3 days after Pearl Harbor. He was 20 years old. Basic training was hell. Michael shipped out to Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri in January 1942. 8 weeks of drills, marches, obstacle courses, and screaming drill sergeants who seemed to hate every recruit with equal passion. Michael learned to shoot an M1 Garand rifle, learned to dig a foxhole, learned to low crawl under barbed wire while live machine gun rounds cracked overhead, learned that the Army didn't care if you were tired, cold, hungry, or homesick. The Army cared if you could follow orders and stay alive. He wrote Helen letters every week, short ones at first, just letting her know he was okay, that he missed her, that he'd be home soon. But as the months dragged on, the letters grew longer. He told her about the other men in his unit, about the awful food and the endless marching and the blisters on his feet that never seemed to heal. He didn't tell her about the doubts. Late at night, lying in his bunk while other men snored around him, Michael would stare at the ceiling and wonder if he'd made the right choice. Wonder if he was actually brave enough for what was coming. Wonder if, when the bullets started flying, he'd freeze up like some men did in the stories. He kept those thoughts to himself. In April 1942, Michael finished basic training and was assigned to the 29th Infantry Division. The Blue and Gray Division, they called it. A National Guard unit with soldiers from Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania, now filled out with recruits from across the country. Michael was placed in Company A, 116th Infantry Regiment. He'd spend the next 2 years training with these men. They'd become closer than brothers, and most of them would die together on a beach in France. In September 1943, Michael's division shipped out to England. They crossed the Atlantic on a convoy of troop ships, 40 vessels packed with soldiers, zigzagging to avoid German U-boats prowling beneath the waves. Michael spent most of the crossing seasick, leaning over the rail, vomiting into the grey ocean. England was cold and wet and nothing like Iowa. The men were stationed near the town of Tidworth, living in Quonset huts and training on the rocky English coast. They practiced amphibious landings, storming beaches from Higgins boats, charging through surf with full packs, learning to move under fire. The drills were brutal. The officers pushed them hard. "You're going to invade France," the colonel told them during one particularly hellish session, "and when you do, the Germans are going to do everything in their power to kill you. So you'd better be ready." Michael wrote to Helen less frequently now. The censors wouldn't let him say where he was or what they were training for. His letters became vague, just reassurances that he was okay, that he thought about her every day, that he couldn't wait to come home. In March 1944, Helen sent Michael a letter with news that made him weep in his bunk. She was pregnant, due in late June. Michael read that letter 20 times. He carried it everywhere, folded in his breast pocket, right over his heart. He'd be a father. A father. The thought terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. He wrote back immediately. "I promise I'll be home to meet our baby. I don't care what it takes. I promise, Helen. I swear to God." It was a promise he desperately wanted to keep. But deep down, Michael was starting to realize that some promises are beyond a man's control. In May 1944, something happened that would change everything for Michael Thompson. The 116th Infantry was conducting a live-fire training exercise on Slapton Sands, a beach on the southern coast of England that resembled the beaches of Normandy. The exercise was designed to simulate real combat, live ammunition, real explosives, actual machine gun fire over the heads of advancing soldiers. The army wanted the men ready. They wanted them hard. They wanted them to know what chaos felt like before they hit the real beaches. On May 15th, Company A drew the assignment for a full assault drill. 12 squads, 144 men. They'd board Higgins boats, approach the beach under covering fire from destroyers offshore, then storm the sand and take simulated objectives inland. Michael's squad, 12 men led by Sergeant Bill Haywood, was in the second wave. Among those 12 men was Private Eddie Sullivan. Eddie Sullivan was from South Boston, 19 years old. Red hair, freckles, thin as a rail. He'd lied about his age to enlist, told the recruiter he was 18 when he was really 16. By the time the army figured it out, he was already overseas, so they let him stay. Eddie was a good kid, friendly, always smiling. But he was also nervous, jumpy in a way that worried the other men. He startled at loud noises, had nightmares, threw up before every training drill. Sergeant Haywood pulled Michael aside one day and said, "Keep an eye on Sullivan. He's fragile. When the shooting starts for real, I don't know if he'll hold." Michael promised he would. On May 15th, the drill began. The Higgins boats roared toward Slapton Sands, while Navy destroyers fired shells over their heads, massive explosions that sent columns of sand and smoke into the air. The noise was deafening. Even though Michael knew it was training, his heart hammered in his chest. The ramp dropped. Michael and his squad charged into the surf. Machine guns opened up from bunkers on the bluffs, not aimed at them, but firing over their heads, close enough that you could hear the bullets snapping through the air. Artillery simulators exploded in the water. Smoke grenades turned the beach into a gray fog. It was chaos. Michael ran. His boots hit the sand. He dropped behind cover and looked back to check his squad. That's when he saw Eddie. Eddie Sullivan had frozen. He was standing in waist-deep water, 30 feet from shore, completely still. His rifle hung limp in his hands. His eyes were wide, unfocused. The look of a man who'd stopped processing reality. The drill instructors were screaming at him through megaphones. "Move, soldier! Get your ass to cover!" But Eddie didn't move. He just stood there, shaking. Machine guns kept firing. Explosions kept going off. The drill wasn't stopping. Sergeant Haywood yelled at Michael, "Thompson, leave him! Keep moving!" Michael hesitated. Every instinct told him to stay in cover. The drill sergeant said this was what combat would be like. Men would freeze, men would panic, and you couldn't save everyone. You had to keep moving or you'd die too. But Michael couldn't do it. He couldn't leave Eddie standing there. Michael broke cover and sprinted back into the water. He grabbed Eddie by the collar and dragged him toward shore. Eddie's legs barely worked. Michael was hauling dead weight through the surf, while bullets cracked overhead and explosions threw up spray around them. They made it to the sand dune. Barely. Michael shoved Eddie down and threw himself beside him, gasping for air. The drill ended 10 minutes later. Afterward, Sergeant Haywood chewed Michael out. "What the hell were you thinking, Thompson? You broke formation. You endangered yourself for a man who couldn't hack it. He's one of us, Sarge. I wasn't leaving him. In real combat, you'd both be dead. Maybe. But we're not dead now." Haywood stared at Michael for a long moment, then shook his head. "You're either the bravest man I know, or the dumbest. I haven't figured out which yet." Michael didn't respond. Later that night, Eddie found Michael sitting alone outside the barracks. Eddie's eyes were red. He'd been crying. "I'm sorry," Eddie whispered. "I don't know what happened. I couldn't move. It's okay. No, it's not. I froze. I'm a coward. You're not a coward, Eddie. You were just scared. We're all scared. Eddie shook his head. You don't get it, Mike. That's the second time I've frozen. It happened during basic training, too. What if it happens again when it's real? What if I get you killed? Michael put a hand on Eddie's shoulder. Listen to me. When we hit the real beach, you're not going to freeze. You know why? Because I'm going to be right next to you, and I'm not going to let anything happen to you. Understand? Eddie nodded, but he didn't look convinced. I won't freeze again, Eddie said quietly. I promise. When it counts, I'll be ready. Michael wanted to believe him, but deep down, he wasn't sure. June 5th, 1944. The day the world changed forever was just hours away, but nobody knew exactly when the order would come. For weeks, the men of the 116th Infantry had been locked down in staging areas near the English coast. They weren't allowed to leave, weren't allowed to send mail. The invasion was imminent, and operational security was absolute. Michael Thompson and Company A had been loaded onto the USS Samuel Chase, a transport ship packed with 2,000 men. They'd been sitting at anchor off the coast for 3 days, waiting for the weather to clear. General Eisenhower had postponed the invasion once already. June 5th had been the original date, but storms over the English Channel made it impossible. Now the forecast showed a brief window on June 6th. Not ideal, but good enough. The order came down that evening. Tomorrow, dawn, Omaha Beach. The atmosphere below deck was thick with tension. Some men played cards, though nobody could focus. Some cleaned their rifles for the 10th time. Some wrote letters home, just in case. Letters, the kind you hope never get sent. Some men prayed. Father O'Malley, the company chaplain, moved through the cramped quarters offering blessings. He was a short man with kind eyes and a gentle voice that somehow carried over the noise of the ship. God is with you, he told the men, and no matter what happens tomorrow, you are not alone. Michael watched him go. He wanted to believe it, but faith felt like a luxury for men who weren't about to wade into machine gun fire. Michael found a quiet corner near the stern of the ship and pulled out a piece of paper. He was going to write to Helen, one last letter, just in case. Michael stared at the blank page for a long time. What do you say when you might die tomorrow? How do you sum up everything you feel? All the love, all the fear, all the regrets, in a few hundred words. Michael thought about Helen, about their little house on Maple Street, about the porch that sagged, and the kitchen faucet that leaked, and the way Helen hummed while she cooked breakfast. He thought about their baby, a daughter Helen had written in her last letter. She was sure it was a girl. She wanted to name her Grace, after her grandmother. Michael had never met his daughter, never held her, never heard her cry or watched her sleep or felt the weight of her tiny hand wrapped around his finger. And now, there was a very real chance he never would. He started writing. My dearest Helen, by the time you read this, you'll know whether I kept my promise to come home. I'm writing this on June 5th, the night before we go in. It's loud down here, men playing cards, some praying, others just staring at the walls. Johnny Martinez next to me keeps asking if I want to see pictures of his girl back in Texas. I've seen them 20 times already, but I keep saying yes because it gives him something to hold on to, something real, something worth surviving for. I keep thinking about our last night together before I shipped out. You were 7 months along with Grace. Yes, I love that name. You were so beautiful, Helen. I know you said you felt huge and ungainly, But to me, you looked like everything good in the world, wrapped up in one person. We sat on the porch that night, remember? You made lemonade even though sugar was rationed. And we talked about what we'd do when I got home. I said I'd fix that sagging porch step. You said you'd make me your mother's pot roast. We laughed about stupid things. We didn't talk about the war. I wish I'd told you then what I'm going to tell you now, but I couldn't. I was too afraid. Michael paused. His hand was shaking. The pencil felt heavy, like it was made of lead instead of wood. Around him, the ship groaned and creaked. Men muttered in the darkness. Somewhere above deck, an officer shouted coordinates. Michael took a breath and kept writing. Helen, I need to tell you something I've never told anyone. I'm scared. Not just normal scared, the kind everyone feels before a fight. I'm scared that when the moment comes, I won't be brave enough, that I'll freeze, that I'll let the men around me down. 3 weeks ago, during training, a soldier in my squad froze up during a live fire drill. His name is Eddie Sullivan. Just a kid, really. 19 years old. Lied about his age to enlist. When the machine guns started firing, Eddie just stopped moving. He stood there in the middle of the beach like a statue, while bullets flew overhead. I broke cover and pulled him to safety. The drill sergeant chewed me out afterward, said I was stupid, said in real combat we'd both be dead. But I couldn't leave him, Helen. I just couldn't. Eddie looked at me afterward, with tears in his eyes, and said, I won't freeze again, I promise. But I don't know if that's true. And worse, I don't know if I believe it about myself either. What if I'm the one who freezes tomorrow? What if when the bullets start flying for real, my legs stop working and my brain shuts down, and I just stand there like Eddie did? What if I'm not the man you think I am? The chaplain came by tonight and told us to make peace with God. He said some of us won't make it home, and that's just the way war is. He said the man next to you might fall, but you keep moving forward. That's what soldiers do. But I keep looking at Eddie Sullivan, and all I can think is, what if that's me tomorrow? What if I'm the one who falls? Helen, if I don't make it home, I need you to know something. I wasn't scared of dying. I was scared of being a coward. I was scared that when it mattered most, I wouldn't measure up. I've never told anyone that. Not the other guys. Not Sergeant Hayward. Not even God in my prayers, though I probably should have. But I'm telling you now, because if I don't come back, I need you to know I tried. I swear to God, Helen, I tried to be the man you deserved, the man our daughter deserves. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Nobody does. They say the beach is fortified. They say the Germans have been preparing for this for years. They say a lot of us won't make it off the sand. But I'm going to try. I'm going to run as fast as I can, and fight as hard as I can, and do everything I can to get back to you. And if I can't, tell Grace about me. Tell her I loved her, even though I never got to meet her. Tell her I thought about her every day. Tell her I wanted to teach her how to ride a bike and catch fireflies and skip stones on the Cedar River. Tell her I was brave, even if I wasn't. Even if in the end, I was just a scared farm boy from Iowa who got in way over his head. Tell her I was brave anyway. I love you, Helen. I love you more than I ever found the words to say. Take care of our Grace. And please, please don't hate me if I don't come home. All my love forever, Michael. Michael folded the letter carefully and slid it into an envelope. He addressed it in neat block letters. Mrs. Helen Thompson, 412, Maple Street, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Then he tucked it into the inside pocket of his field jacket, right over his heart, where the fabric was reinforced. If he died, someone would find it. That's what they did with soldiers' personal effects. They sent them home. Michael leaned back against the cold metal wall of the ship and closed his eyes. He didn't sleep. None of them did. At 3 a.m., the lights came on. "All right, you apes, on your feet. Breakfast in 15 minutes. The men stirred slowly, groaning, rubbing sleep from eyes that had never truly closed. Breakfast was served at 3:30 a.m. Steak and eggs. Real coffee. The best meal most of these men had seen in months. They called it the condemned man's meal. Nobody ate much. Michael forced down a few bites, but his stomach was in knots. Across the table, Eddie Sullivan stared at his plate, pale as a ghost. "You okay?" Michael asked. Eddie nodded without looking up. "Yeah, I'm okay." He wasn't okay. Michael could see it, but there was nothing left to say. At 4:30 a.m., the order came to load the boats. Company A filed up onto the deck and climbed down cargo nets into the Higgins boats, flat-bottomed landing craft that bobbed violently in the choppy water. 30 men per boat, packed shoulder to shoulder. Michael stood near the front, by the ramp. Eddie Sullivan was directly behind him. The boat engine roared to life. And just like that, they were heading toward France. It's important to understand what Omaha Beach was before we talk about what happened there. Omaha was a crescent-shaped stretch of sand, about 6 miles long on the coast of Normandy, France. Behind the beach rose steep bluffs, cliffs up to 170 feet high, covered in thick grass and scrub. The Germans had spent 4 years turning those bluffs into a fortress. Concrete bunkers reinforced with steel, MG-42 machine gun nests with interlocking fields of fire, mortar pits, artillery positions, barbed wire, mines buried in the sand, wooden obstacles in the surf designed to rip the bottoms out of landing craft, and defending it all, the German 352nd Infantry Division. Battle-hardened soldiers who'd fought on the Eastern Front, men who knew how to kill. The Allied planners knew Omaha would be tough, but they believed overwhelming firepower, naval bombardment, airstrikes, tanks, would soften the defenses enough for the infantry to break through. They were wrong. The naval bombardment that morning was supposed to last 40 minutes. It lasted 35, and most of the shells missed their targets, falling harmlessly inland. The bombers that were supposed to crater the beach defenses dropped their payloads too late, hitting empty fields miles behind the coast. The amphibious tanks, 32 of them, designed to support the infantry, launched too far from shore in rough seas. 27 sank before reaching the beach. By the time the first wave of infantry approached Omaha at 6:30 a.m., the German defenses were almost completely intact. It was going to be a slaughter. Michael Thompson's boat was in the second wave, scheduled to land at 6:35 a.m., 5 minutes behind the first wave. As they approached the beach, Michael could see smoke rising from the bluffs. He could hear the distant crackle of machine gun fire. He told himself it was going according to plan. Then he saw the bodies in the water, dozens of them, floating face down, drifting with the tide. Soldiers from the first wave, cut down before they'd made it 10 feet. The water around the boat turned pink, then red. Behind Michael, someone vomited. "Oh God," Eddie whispered. "Oh God, oh God, oh God." "Eddie, look at me." Eddie's eyes were wide, unfocused. "Eddie, look at me." Eddie met Michael's gaze. "You're going to be okay," Michael said. "We're going to get through this. Stay close to me. Do exactly what I do. Understand?" Eddie nodded, but Michael could see he was barely holding it together. The boat was 200 yards from shore now. Machine gun bullets started hitting the water around them. little geysers erupting in neat rows. 100 yards. The MG-42s found their range. Bullets punched through the steel sides of the boat. A soldier next to Michael screamed and went down, clutching his leg. 50 yards. The boat lurched as it hit a sandbar. The ramp started to drop. Sergeant Haywood yelled over the chaos, "Go, go, go!" The ramp fell. Machine gun fire swept across the opening. 3 men at the front dropped instantly, killed before they could take a step. Michael jumped over their bodies and plunged into the water. The water was deeper than expected. Michael went under immediately, dragged down by 60 pounds of gear. His boots didn't touch bottom. He thrashed, panicking, swallowing seawater mixed with diesel fuel and blood. His lungs burned. His vision went dark. Then his boots hit sand. He pushed off and broke the surface, gasping, coughing. Bullets zipped past his head, so close he could feel the air displacement. Men were screaming all around him, dying, drowning, calling for medics who couldn't reach them. Michael waded forward. The water was chest deep, and every step felt like moving through concrete. His legs burned. His pack pulled at his shoulders. 30 feet to the beach, 20 feet. An explosion erupted to his left, a mortar shell. The concussion knocked him sideways. His ears rang. 10 feet. His boots hit dry sand. Michael ran. He didn't think, didn't aim, didn't look back. He just ran, every muscle screaming, legs pumping, lungs heaving. A steel beach obstacle loomed ahead. A hedgehog, they called it, a tangle of iron rails designed to stop tanks. Michael dove behind it and pressed himself flat against the sand. Bullets pinged off the metal. Sand kicked up in his face. He was alive. For now. Michael lay there for maybe 30 seconds, gasping, heart hammering so hard he thought it might burst. Around him, the beach was hell. Bodies everywhere. Men crawling through the sand, trailing blood. The surf rolling in red. Smoke so thick you could barely see 50 feet. And the noise. God, the noise. Machine guns firing in long, tearing bursts. Mortars whistling down and exploding in fountains of sand and shrapnel. Men screaming for their mothers, for medics, for God. Michael pressed his face into the sand and prayed. Not for survival, just for courage. Just enough courage to keep moving. Then he heard a voice. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. Mike, Mike, help. Michael's blood went cold. He knew that voice. Michael lifted his head and looked back toward the water. Eddie Sullivan was still in the surf, waist deep, frozen, just like the drill. Machine gun fire was chewing up the water around him, getting closer with every burst. 30 feet to Eddie's left, a soldier took a round to the chest and went down. Eddie just stood there, paralyzed. Michael's mind raced. The sergeant's words echoed in his head. In real combat, you'd both be dead. Every training exercise, every briefing, every tactical lecture said the same thing. Never go back. Keep moving forward. One man isn't worth 2 lives. Eddie was going to die whether Michael went back or not. Going back was suicide. Michael knew this with absolute certainty. And yet, in Michael Thompson's jacket pocket, pressed against his heart, was the letter. The letter where he'd written, I was scared that when the moment came, I wouldn't be brave enough. Tell Grace I was brave, even if I wasn't. Now, crouched behind a beach obstacle, while machine gun fire tore through the air around him, Michael had a choice. He could stay here, wait for the chaos to die down, push inland with the other survivors, maybe live through this, or he could go back for Eddie Sullivan and probably die. Later, historians would analyze the Battle of Omaha Beach and conclude that Company A 116th Infantry suffered the highest casualty rate of any unit that day. 96% casualties in the first 30 minutes. Out of 200 men, only 8 made it off the beach unwounded. The odds of survival were so low that the generals back in England briefly considered evacuating the entire beach and writing off the invasion as a failure. Michael Thompson didn't know any of this. All he knew was that Eddie Sullivan was going to die if someone didn't help him. And the only someone close enough was Michael. Michael broke cover. He ran back toward the water, against the flow of men trying to reach the beach. Later, witnesses would say they couldn't believe what they were seeing. A soldier charging back into the kill zone, running toward the machine guns instead of away from them. Some thought he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. Michael splashed into the surf. His boots sank into the sand. The water dragged at his legs. "Eddie! Eddie!" Eddie turned. His face was white. Tears streamed down his cheeks. "I can't move, Mike. I can't. Yes, you can. Move." Michael grabbed Eddie by the arm and pulled. Eddie's legs finally unlocked. He stumbled forward. They waded toward shore together, Michael half dragging Eddie through the chest-deep water, 15 feet from the beach. That's when the machine gun found them. The first burst hit Eddie Sullivan twice in the chest. He made a sound, not a scream, just a grunt of surprise, and went limp. Michael held onto him, still pulling, still moving. 10 feet from shore. The second burst hit Michael. 3 rounds. Center mass. One punched through his lower abdomen, one shattered 2 ribs, one nicked his lung. Michael's legs gave out. He fell forward, dragging Eddie with him, and they both went under the water. Michael Thompson's last conscious thought was this: "I tried. God, I tried." Then the water closed over his head, and everything went dark. Medics found Eddie Sullivan 40 minutes later, half buried in the sand at the tide line. He had 2 bullets in his chest. He'd lost a massive amount of blood. His pulse was thready and weak, but he was breathing. They dragged him to an aid station set up in the lee of the bluffs, stuck an IV in his arm, and worked frantically to stabilize him. Eddie survived. Against all odds, Eddie Sullivan survived. Michael Thompson's body was found 2 hours later, during the second sweep of the beach. He was face down in shallow water, still clutching Eddie's jacket. A Navy corpsman named David Rodriguez pulled him out and checked for a pulse. Nothing. Rodriguez was about to move on when he noticed the corner of an envelope sticking out of Michael's jacket pocket. Protocol said personal effects were supposed to be catalogued and shipped home with the body. But something made Rodriguez pull out the letter and read it. He sat there in the sand, covered in blood and seawater, reading Michael Thompson's last words to his wife. When he finished, Rodriguez was crying. He sealed the letter in a waterproof pouch, wrote, "Priority, deliver to next of kin," across the front, and made sure it went into the officer's dispatch bag that same day. On June 23, 1944, 17 days after D-Day, Helen Thompson received a telegram. She was home alone. Her father had taken the baby for the afternoon, so Helen could rest. She'd been having trouble sleeping since Michael shipped out, and the exhaustion was catching up with her. The knock came at 2:15 p.m. Helen opened the door to find a Western Union courier holding a yellow envelope. She knew what it was before he said a word. Everyone knew what yellow telegrams meant. The telegram was brief. "The Secretary of War desires me to express his deep regret that your husband, Private First Class, Michael J. Thompson, was killed in action on 6th June in France. Stop letter to follow stop." Helen read it 3 times before the words made sense. Killed in action. June 6th. Michael was dead. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She just stood there in the doorway, holding the telegram, feeling like the ground had opened beneath her feet. The courier shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, I'm very sorry for your loss." Helen nodded mechanically. "Thank you." She closed the door. Then she collapsed in the hallway and wept until she couldn't breathe. Helen's father found her an hour later, still on the floor, the telegram clutched in her hand. He helped her to the couch, made her tea she didn't drink, held her while she sobbed. In the next room, baby Grace started crying, hungry, needing to be fed. Helen couldn't move. Her father brought the baby to her, 3 months old, Michael's daughter, the child he'd promised to come home to meet. Helen held Grace and looked into her tiny face and saw Michael's eyes staring back at her. That's when it became real. Michael was never coming home. He'd never hold this baby, never watch her take her first steps, never teach her to ride a bike or read bedtime stories or walk her down the aisle someday. He was gone. The second letter arrived 3 days later, June 26th, Monday morning. Helen was feeding Grace when she heard the mailman on the porch. She wasn't expecting anything. The army had said a formal letter would come eventually. Details about Michael's death, information about burial, his personal effects. But this envelope was different. It was stained, water damaged. The address was in Michael's handwriting. Helen's hands shook as she opened it. Helen Thompson read her husband's last letter alone in her kitchen while her daughter slept in the next room. She read about Michael's fear, about Eddie Sullivan freezing during the training drill, about Michael's terror that he'd be a coward when it mattered most. She read, "I was scared that when the moment came, I wouldn't be brave enough." She read, "Tell Grace I was brave, even if I wasn't." When she finished, Helen sat at the kitchen table for a long time, just staring at the words. Her husband had thought he was a coward. He'd died thinking he might not measure up, and Helen had no way to tell him the truth. That same week, Eddie Sullivan woke up in a field hospital in England. He'd been unconscious for 4 days. The doctors said it was a miracle he'd survived. The bullets had missed his heart by inches. When Eddie finally came around, groggy and confused, the first thing he asked was, "Where's Mike? Where's Michael Thompson?" The nurse hesitated. "I'm sorry, soldier. Private Thompson didn't make it." Eddie went very still. "What happened?" "I don't know the details. I just know he was killed on the beach." Eddie closed his eyes. He knew exactly what had happened. Michael had come back for him, and it had gotten him killed. Eddie Sullivan was discharged from the hospital in August 1944. His wounds had healed enough for light duty, but he wasn't cleared to return to combat. He spent the rest of the war stateside, training new recruits at Fort Benning, Georgia. He wrote letters to Helen Thompson, trying to explain what had happened, trying to tell her that Michael had saved his life, that Michael was a hero. Helen wrote back. She sent him a copy of Michael's last letter. When Eddie read it, read about Michael's fear, his confession, his desperate hope that he'd be brave enough, Eddie broke down. He understood now. Michael Thompson had been terrified, had doubted himself, had written a letter admitting he thought he might be a coward. And then, when the moment came, Michael had done the bravest thing imaginable anyway. The war ended in May 1945. Eddie Sullivan came home to Boston, married his high school sweetheart, a girl named Margaret O'Brien, and tried to build a normal life. But he couldn't let go of Michael Thompson. In 1946, Eddie took a train to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He'd written Helen ahead of time, asking if he could visit. She'd said yes. On a warm Saturday in June, almost exactly 2 years after D-Day, Eddie Sullivan stood on the porch of 412 Maple Street and knocked on the door. Helen answered. She was thinner than her photographs, her face drawn, but her eyes were kind. "Mrs. Thompson? You must be Eddie." They sat in the living room. Grace, 2 years old now, with her father's dark hair and her mother's smile, played on the floor with wooden blocks. Eddie told Helen everything. He told her about the training exercise, about freezing in the water, about Michael pulling him to safety and getting chewed out by the sergeant. He told her about Omaha Beach, about freezing again, about Michael coming back through the machine gun fire to save him. "He didn't have to," Eddie said, his voice breaking. "He could have stayed in cover. He would have lived. But he came back anyway." Helen was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into a drawer and pulled out Michael's letter. "He thought he was a coward," Helen said softly. "Did you know that?" Eddie nodded. "I read the letter you sent me. He died, thinking he might not have been brave enough. Mrs. Thompson, your husband was the bravest man I ever knew." Helen's eyes filled with tears. "I know. I just wish he'd known it too." Eddie Sullivan visited Helen Thompson every year after that. At first, it was just once a year, on the anniversary of D-Day. He'd drive from Boston to Cedar Rapids and spend the afternoon with Helen and Grace, telling stories about Michael. As the years went on, the visits became more frequent. Eddie and his wife Margaret became close friends with Helen. Their children grew up together. Birthday parties and Christmas cards and summer barbecues. Eddie never missed a chance to tell Grace about her father. "Your dad saved my life twice," Eddie would say. "Once during training, and once on the beach. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. My kids wouldn't be here. None of this would exist." Grace grew up hearing those stories. She grew up knowing her father had been afraid, had written a letter confessing his deepest fear, and had acted anyway. She grew up understanding that bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's loving someone enough to move forward despite it. In 1984, 40 years after D-Day, Grace Thompson traveled to France for the first time. She was 40 years old, a teacher like her grandmother had been, married with 3 children of her own. She'd spent her entire life hearing about Omaha Beach, but she'd never seen it. She hired a guide in Normandy who took her to the beach on a gray morning in June. The cliffs were still there. The bunkers were still there, crumbling now, covered in moss and graffiti. But the beach was peaceful, quiet, just sand and surf and seagulls. Grace walked down to the water's edge and stood where her father had died. She tried to imagine it, the noise, the chaos, the terror. Tried to picture a 23-year-old farm boy from Iowa wading through machine gun fire to save a friend. She couldn't. It was too big, too impossible. And yet he'd done it. Grace visited her father's grave at the Normandy American Cemetery that afternoon. The cemetery sits on a bluff overlooking Omaha Beach. 9,387 white marble crosses and stars of David, arranged in perfect rows, stretching as far as you can see. Michael Thompson's grave is in Plot D, row 23, grave 18. Grace knelt in the grass and placed her hand on the cold marble. "Hi, Dad," she whispered. "It's me, Grace, your daughter. I'm sorry it took me so long to visit." She stayed there for over an hour, just sitting beside the grave, telling her father about her life, about growing up in Iowa, about becoming a teacher, about her husband and children, about all the things Michael had missed. Before she left, Grace pulled a folded piece of paper from her purse. It was a copy of Michael's last letter. She'd carried it with her since she was old enough to understand what it meant. "You said to tell me you were brave," Grace said, her voice breaking. "Even if you weren't. But Dad, you were. You were so brave. I wish you could have known." She placed the letter on the grave and weighted it down with a smooth stone from the beach. Then she walked away. In 1994, on the 50th anniversary of D-Day, Helen Thompson was invited to Normandy for the commemorative ceremony. She was 73 years old, widowed for 50 years. She'd never remarried. Helen stood on Omaha Beach with thousands of other families, sons and daughters and grandchildren of men who'd died there half a century ago. President Clinton gave a speech. Veterans in their 70s wept. The French government awarded medals to aging soldiers who could barely stand. But what Helen remembered most was this: a young French woman, maybe 25 years old, approached her after the ceremony. "Excuse me," the woman said in accented English. "Are you family of someone who died here?" Helen nodded. "My husband, June 6th, 1944. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I want to thank you," she said. "My grandmother lived in a village the Germans occupied. She always said the Americans freed us, that we owe you everything." Helen didn't know what to say. "Your husband," the woman continued. "But what was his name?" Michael Thompson." The woman repeated it softly like a prayer. "Thank you, Michael Thompson. Thank you for my freedom." Then she hugged Helen and walked away. Helen stood there on the beach, watching the surf roll in, and cried. Not from sadness, from something else. Something she didn't have a word for. Gratitude, maybe. Or peace. The knowledge that Michael's fear, his terrible, secret fear that he'd be a coward, had been wrong. He'd been brave. He'd been a hero. And 50 years later, people still remembered. Helen Thompson died in 2003 at the age of 82. She'd outlived Michael by 59 years, longer than some marriages last. She never stopped loving him. In her will, Helen left instructions that Michael's last letter should be donated to the National WWII Museum in New Orleans. "People should know," she wrote. "They should know that heroes are just people who are scared. But they do it anyway." The letter is there now, preserved under glass in a climate-controlled case. Visitors stop to read it every day. Some cry, some stand in silence, some take photos. But everyone walks away understanding something important. Eddie Sullivan lived to be 91 years old. He died in 2016, surrounded by his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. At his funeral, his oldest son read a passage Eddie had written shortly before he died. "I've lived a long life. I got to see my children grow up. I got to hold my grandchildren. I got to watch the Red Sox finally win the World Series. I got to do all the things Michael Thompson never got to do. And every single day of my life, I thought about him. I thought about a farm boy from Iowa who was so scared he wrote a letter confessing his fear, and then went and did the bravest thing I've ever seen. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty that I survived, and he didn't. The answer is yes, every day. But I don't think Michael would want that. I think he'd want me to live, to be happy, to make it count. So that's what I tried to do. I tried to live a life that was worth saving, twice. Grace Thompson, Michael's daughter, is 79 years old now, as of 2024. She still lives in Iowa, still teaches, though she's retired now. She's been to Normandy 7 times over the years. Every time, she visits her father's grave. And every time, she finds something left there by strangers. flowers, American flags, handwritten notes. Once, she found a letter from a teenage boy who'd read Michael's story in school. "Dear Mr. Thompson, I just wanted to say thank you. My teacher showed us your letter and told us what you did. I've been really scared lately about stuff in my own life, and reading about you helped me. You said you were scared too, but you did it anyway. I'm going to try to do that. Thank you for being brave. Danny." Grace keeps all the letters people leave. She has a box full of them at home. Letters from teenagers, from veterans, from teachers and students and tourists and historians. All of them saying the same thing: thank you. Your story mattered. You're not forgotten. Michael Thompson never wanted to be a hero. He was just a farm boy from Iowa who loved his wife and wanted to meet his daughter. He was scared. He doubted himself. He wrote a letter confessing his deepest fear, that when it mattered most, he wouldn't be brave enough. And then, when the moment came, he ran into machine gun fire to save a friend. He didn't do it because he was fearless. He did it because Eddie Sullivan needed him. He did it because leaving Eddie behind would have haunted him more than dying. He did it because sometimes love is stronger than fear. On June 6, 1944, Michael Thompson made a choice. He could stay safe and live, or he could go back for Eddie and probably die. He chose Eddie, and in doing so, he became the man he'd always hoped to be. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because he acted anyway. There's a quote carved into the memorial at the Normandy American Cemetery. It says, "These endured all and gave all that justice among nations might prevail, and that mankind might enjoy freedom and inherit peace." Michael Thompson's name isn't on that memorial. He was just one of thousands, one white cross among 9,387. But his letter survived. His story survived. And 80 years later, people still read his words and understand what courage really means. Before we end, I want to read you one more thing. In 2019, a high school English teacher in Iowa assigned her students to read Michael Thompson's letter as part of a unit on World War II. One of her students, a shy 17-year-old girl named Emma, wrote an essay about it. She wrote, "I used to think brave people were people who weren't afraid of anything, like superheroes or soldiers in movies who just charge into danger without thinking. But Michael Thompson's letter taught me something different. He was afraid. He thought he might be a coward. He was terrified. But he went anyway. That's what real bravery is. It's not having no fear. It's having all the fear in the world and choosing to do the right thing despite it." I think about that a lot now. When I'm scared to speak up in class, or try something new, or stand up for someone who needs help, I think, Michael Thompson was scared too. But he did it anyway. And if a farm boy from Iowa could run into machine gun fire to save a friend, then I can find the courage to do the small, scary things in my life. Thank you, Michael Thompson. Your letter saved more than just Eddie Sullivan. It saves everyone who reads it and realizes that being scared doesn't make you weak. It just makes you human. And doing the right thing anyway, that's what makes you a hero. Michael Thompson died on Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944. He was 23 years old. He never met his daughter. He never fixed the sagging porch step. He never got to hold his wife again, or taste her mother's pot roast, or skip stones on the Cedar River. But he saved Eddie Sullivan's life. And 80 years later, his letter is still teaching people what courage means. Still reminding us that heroes aren't fearless. They're just ordinary people who love someone enough to act despite their fear. If you ever find yourself in New Orleans, visit the National WWII Museum. Find the exhibit on D-Day. find Michael Thompson's letter behind the glass. Read it. And remember, bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's loving someone enough to move forward anyway. This has been The Letter Archive. Thank you for listening to Michael's story. If you have letters or diaries from your family's past, stories that deserve to be told, please share them with us. Email in description. Every letter has a story. Every story deserves to be remembered. Until next time.